I discovered MicroVision back in 2000 through the age of spiritual machines, and I've been fascinated ever since. In 2004, I started Ben's MicroVision blog, which eventually led to me joining MicroVision in 2006 to be the product manager for eyewear. We generated about $5 million in revenue before I left in 2011, but I never stopped believing in what this company could become. 14 years later, I'm still a passionate shareholder, and now I share that passion every week on Ben's MicroVision podcast. Subscribe and join the ride. Welcome everyone to another episode of Ben's MicroVision podcast, a podcast for general information and entertainment purposes only, not a financial advice podcast. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the overarching narrative surrounding the company and take a look at some developments in the competitive landscape, do a little segmentation, and see if we can understand the current market dynamics and the opportunities ahead for the company. All right, so let's get into it. If you are new here and you're interested in the LiDAR sensing perception markets and augmented reality, please do go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I will do my level best to bring you the best quality MicroVision related information that I can each week. All right, welcome once again. This is episode 28 of Ben's MicroVision podcast. This one's titled Narrative Gap Analysis, presented by myself and brought to you by laserroasted.com. 1 cup and you'll say, make mine laser roasted. Here is the show's standard disclaimer. If you need to refer to it, you may want to take a screenshot so you can remind yourself of the terms and conditions of watching the program. Thanks so much. Okay, those of you who watched the show last week to the very end segment may recall this slide or a version of it that I presented to explain competition in the marketplace and how MicroVision needs to penetrate through the layers of competing companies, both in terms of investors as well as customers. And I wanted to drill in on one topic, which is narrative. Now, narrative actually is not just on the left-hand side pointed at investors, but it's also pointed at customers. And what narrative does is it tells investors and customers who the company is, why the company is relevant and important, why they should pick up the phone when we call, and what we're all about contemporaneously, like what's happening now that makes the company relevant, interesting, dynamic, important, all of these things. I have come to the belief that there's a gap in the narrative around the company and what the reality is of the company at this stage in its evolution. So who the company really is versus the way the company is perceived and the talk track around the company in the minds of investors and maybe customers, I don't know. I'm much closer to the investor side. And I wanted to just evaluate that perceived gap on my part a little bit with you all and see if you guys feel the same way or gather your inputs on the same topic. Okay, so as I mentioned, a narrative gap is the difference between what the company is actually doing and what the market thinks the company is doing. And I would extend that to why the company actually is relevant and important to what the market thinks as far as the company's relevance and importance. And I think there's 3 categories of narrative gap that I want to explore, and they are identity gap, momentum gap, and category ownership gap. So let's talk about all 3 of those in that order. So the first one is identity gap, and I'm going to suggest what I believe MicroVision really is, which is a sensing and perception and edge computing company, enabling machine automation and physical AI. They have defense-grade optical and computing heritage, Now they're entering the intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance and aerial systems space. And LiDAR is just one expression of their broader intelligence platform. Now, the market thinks of MicroVision as an automotive LiDAR company trying to gain traction with OEMs in a very competitive market. And so you've got this gap between the perception in the market and the reality and the aspiration of what MicroVision is becoming today. So why does this gap exist? It exists because MicroVision has put themselves forward sort of specifications first, best in class, hardware-centric positioning. Our device is the best device, most capable device on Earth. So while that's great, it's about the device itself rather than what the device enables. And so the broader story about the enablement and the unlocking of advanced capabilities is kind of bypassed for, our widget is the best. Second point I would make is a lack of public validation from customers in automotive and industrial segments. It's a really important thing to get folks to go on record as saying, yes, this is actually true. These devices are extremely valuable for what we seek to accomplish. And if you go back a few years, we saw the NVIDIA press release when they first got, as part of the NVIDIA Drive platform, there was a quote from a gentleman who talked about the amazing capabilities of the Maven and all of the great things it could do, and they were thrilled to put it into the platform and this and that. And to my knowledge, that stands to be the only customer or partner public statement of validation about MicroVision. So we've gone around, we've done a lot of stuff, but we haven't had any of the customers kind of repeat it back. So you know what? These guys are onto something. So, that's not ideal. Thirdly, after the company announced earlier in the year that they were taking on board military opportunities for the sensing and compute platform, the company didn't really dive in as far as public repositioning on the defense offer or about sensing and perception more broadly than just MicroVision's products and the sensors. So they keep the sensors first and foremost. They have not updated the website about the defense offer in any way that I can tell, other than a reference to rugged battlefields in the About Us section. So if they really want to embrace being a provider of advanced capabilities into the defense market, they're going to need to put their foot forward and stake their claim that says, this is who we are today. And lastly, about augmented reality. The augmented reality heritage of the company is what makes the company unique and long-lived. We've been in business for more than 30 years. And while we were in business for those 30 years, we were developing augmented reality systems and capabilities that never existed on Earth prior to the founding of MicroVision. So this capability had been really downplayed, as part of a segment pivot by the previous administration in the company. And it was downplayed for the benefit of saying, we are now automotive LiDAR. What I'm saying is that the history, the legacy of the company in augmented reality is itself extremely valuable because it shows that we've provided very high tech, very high performing, very high capability, rugged tooling to the same segment that we're trying to attack in defense today, as well as giving it defense grade kind of quality in the other segments that we want to attack. So, in the minds of customers or people, it's just another LiDAR company amongst a crowded LiDAR field. But actually, this is a company with the most leading edge technology for human perception of digital information, now going into machine perception of real world environments. And that is a hook. That's the through line of the company, is that first we enabled people to understand the digital world and seamlessly perceive digital alongside, real reality. And now we're taking real reality and making it so that machines can perceive that in a seamless way. So what a great story. So if we agree that there's a gap between the company's identity, or the identity that they are, turning into, and the company's perception in the market, then what can be done to close that gap? And here are a few of my ideas for what could be done to help establish the new MicroVision identity in the minds of all the different stakeholders. First one would be, let's retire safe mobility as the identity for something that's broader and more resonant. I had suggested, if you go back to, I think, episode 4 of this program, spatial intelligence for a connected world, as one thought about how can you capture the meaning and the value and the essence of what the company provides as a sensing and perception platform across defense, industrial, and automotive markets, as well as consumer AR, if that market is ever something that we're going to go get. Reasserting the AR and near-eye display lineage, not as the product and not as the current focus in terms of development, capital allocation, or marketing, but as the credibility builder and a future market enabler, right? That's still us. We still did all those things. We still have all those patents. We still have that technology. Like, that is still us. And even though the market now and the bigger opportunity now is to go in, make LiDAR ubiquitous and get that to 140 million units per year, right? That's going to be massive. A company would be the biggest thing ever. But still in all, that AR lineage and history is who we are, and that can be leveraged. Integrate the aerial systems team and the defense offer into the identity, not as a side quest, not as a extra thing we're doing, but part of the core. And, I'm so happy that we got this defense advisory board. I'm so happy that we got this aerial systems team, which is made up of people who've worked in this industry. And I'm so happy that defense is a top level segment that we're going to go attack, because this is the best segment for us right now. And there's a lot of reason for that. And we'll talk about that. And I have talked about that before. But what they have not done yet is embed that into the identity, right? Safe mobility at the speed of life is not a defense company. It's just not. And if we want to be a defense company, we're going to need to really embrace it. Like, imagine the MicroVision site and tagline and whole thing if defense was the only segment, right? What would that look like? It would look radically different, right? It doesn't have to be the only segment, but it needs to be embraced and expounded upon in a way that we haven't seen yet. There is a larger market theme of physical AI, edge AI, and defense modernization in the market. And as I mentioned in earlier episodes, there are ETFs with tens of billions of dollars across them, specifically focused on that theme of AI or the theme of defense modernization. And, a couple of them have MicroVision in them, but the majority of them do not. And they do not because MicroVision is not perceived as an artificial intelligence company. And that's because people don't yet connect the idea that making machines intelligent and giving them eyes to perceive the real world and helping them understand, what am I looking at and what action should I take next, is itself artificial intelligence. And it's artificial intelligence in a 3D physical world, which is, in my opinion, orders of magnitude more valuable than artificial intelligence of the chatbot and file manipulation variety like we see with ChatGPT and the others. So if you're operating in the hottest space, which is AI, but nobody connects the dots, like, that's a missed opportunity. So how do you say we're taking AI into its next evolution, right? Bringing it into three-dimensional machine perception and awareness. That's awesome, right? Let's put some of these humanoid robots, front and center. Let's strap a Movia L to the chest of one of these C-3PO looking things and see if it can't perceive its environment better. I imagine it would. And lastly, capturing and leveraging market validation from customers. Now, I know it's not an easy thing to get anybody to go on the record and say, we love your device, your software, your capability, your team, any of those things. But it makes a difference as to how the company is perceived. So obviously, getting a commercial win where we can attach the name to the company is going to be very, very important. When we do that, let's leverage the hell out of it for the benefit of the validation that brings to the company in the minds of all the different stakeholders. This one, I'm sure, is totally obvious to all involved. There's magic in Christmas morning. The sound of wrapping paper, the light in their eyes, the beautiful, joyful chaos of it all. But sometimes, the most magical moment is the first sip. Fresh, warm, ground moments ago. Laser roasted, for the quiet moments that make the loud ones worth it. Make this Christmas a laser roasted Christmas. All right, next I'm going to talk about the momentum gap. And this is the difference between what the world perceives that MicroVision is doing versus what MicroVision actually has done and is doing. Okay, in the last 12 months or less, we've restructured the leadership of the company. We've added a CEO who's run a multi-billion-dollar P&L as part of Aptiv and has led programs to proliferate new sensing modalities in the key target market that we wish to go serve. Like, you can't beat that. This guy's been there and done that. So that is awesome. We've also built this aerial systems team. We've got a flight facility or airstrip out in DC. So we broadened the scope operationally about what the company can actually do. We've completed a defense credibility arc, or started to recapture our defense credibility with the advisory board, with the new team, with the operational capability, including the airstrip. And now we can hope that that's going to lead to program wins and opportunities with customers to synergize and demonstrate our value in real programs. And we've repositioned a little bit from just LiDAR units to intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, reconnaissance capability, a sensing platform, which is beyond just a LiDAR sensor. All right, so that's a big change over the last year or so, right? However, the market still perceives, well, they haven't won any deals with OEMs, so they don't have any momentum. Well, we just talked about a lot of strategic momentum and evolution that's happening, every day right now. Still pre-revenue, and revenue numbers are obviously not where they need to be. And one other thing is that the company had $99.5 million of cash and equivalents on the books as of the time of the last report, They spent some of that money, not very much, to go and acquire Scantinol. And, they're running the business, so money is being consumed to do that. But $100 million is a fair amount of runway, probably more cash than I can remember the company having for quite some time. So, it's a stable environment to come into as far as cash balance goes when you're trying to build this new machine to go and attack those three segments. Okay, so why does this momentum gap persist? The gap persists because all of those wins are strategic in nature. They're not transactional, right? Nobody's handing us a suitcase full of cash this minute. But all of those changes are happening. That is momentum. It's corporate evolution type momentum, but it's still momentum. There haven't been quarterly revenue signals that suggest traction is taking place, right? This is still forward looking. The defense offer itself and the timelines associated with it are not 100% clear, and the industrial offer for forklifts and warehousing lacks that market validation that I was talking about earlier. How do we close that momentum gap? We can close the momentum gap by making the aerial systems team tangible with demos, use cases, videos, showing that drone agnostic perception layer story, right? What is this offer and why is it valuable? Why is it game changing? Bringing the new management team forward. It's a new day at the company. It's not your father's MicroVision. It's a new MicroVision with a new management team that's been there and done that as far as commercial execution goes. And then connecting MicroVision as the enabler, because people hear a lot about defense modernization programs, drone domination program that Pete Hegseth was just talking about earlier this week. And if we can figure out a way to say, oh, that means MicroVision, then you've really got something, because you've got a tailwind, you've got a voice in the marketplace talking about urgency to transform defense using drones. And if you're going to be sending thousands of kamikaze drones out at a target, well, first, you need to send the intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance drones to be sure you're going to go hit the right target. So that means that drone domination story is a MicroVision story if we succeed. Okay, the last element of the narrative gap that I want to talk about is the category ownership gap. MicroVision wants to be the sensing and perception layer for a connected world, however we choose to describe that. A supplier of edge perception intelligence across land, air, defense, and the key enabler for the physical AI revolution. But the category that the market puts MicroVision in is commodity LiDAR bucket, and it gives us, competition with Aeva, Innoviz, Ouster, Hesai, Luminar, and LiDAR sensor manufacturers. So if you're put in the wrong category, your valuation and how people evaluate you versus competitors and the narrative around the company are all wrong. So you can fix this by renaming the category that you're playing in. You could call it spatial intelligence. You could call it edge perception solutions. You could call it something that's broader and more integrated than just selling sensor widgets. This allows you to make LiDAR just one module of a broader platform, a platform where your sensing, perception, action capability is more integrated. And you can anchor the company's story and its value in intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, in edge AI, in sensing solutions, and allow the company to clarify that MicroVision solves perception problems, not just where am I going to get my LiDAR sensors. All right, speaking of LiDAR sensors and competition, earlier this week we saw a couple of announcements, one from Aeva on a passenger car win for level 3 with a European automaker, and one from Innoviz about robo-trucks with Daimler Truck. So I thought it would be a good idea to do a quick segmentation of the market in terms of automation levels or SAE levels across passenger cars and trucks, so we can get a sense for which areas the company is playing in and how the competitive landscape is evolving, including these wins by these competitors. Okay, so what you see here is a chart that segments the automotive market by the SAE levels or the automation levels going up and down, and then listing passenger cars by OEM count and passenger cars by unit volume estimations. And then the next couple columns are the same for heavy trucks, how many OEMs and how many annual units. So I've highlighted in green here the particular target markets that I believe MicroVision is pursuing with the tri-LiDAR architecture right now. And that would be your level 2, your level 2 plus, and your level 3 passenger cars. And what you'll notice about this, it may be difficult to read with the font size, but what you'll notice is the highest volume section of the market is the level 2 and level 2 plus. So you've got, call it 50 million cars sold annually with level 2 type capabilities. You've got between 10 and 20 million cars sold annually with level 2 plus capabilities. And then your level 3 gets down to 100,000, 800,000. Now we assume that the level 3 is going to grow, and it's going to grow quite significantly. But the level 2 and level 2 plus is already huge. So if your LiDAR sensors can make level 2 and level 2 plus better, safer, more efficient with a low-cost LiDAR solution, then you're going to have something pretty interesting in a very large market. So the robo-truck win from Innoviz would be all the way over in the level 4 truck cell. So you're farthest to the right on the bottom. So that's between 1 to 100,000 units we could expect. Now we know these numbers are going to ramp as the capabilities proliferate that enable full robo-taxi, robo-truck type experiences. But for the minute, level 4 is the highest automation. There's no driver, etc. Right? So Innoviz got a win with Daimler. Daimler is the number 1 biggest truck manufacturer that I'm aware of. Please feel free to correct me. And so they're going to help that market take shape a little bit. And then Aeva got a win with what I think is acknowledged by some people or guessed by some people to be Mercedes for level 3. So your level 3 is here in the middle, 100 to 800,000 units per year, between 3 to 8 OEMs. So what's the middle of that? Let's just call it 5. So 20% of the market for level 3 passenger cars at this moment would be maybe 100,000 vehicles. So it's a good win for them. But by no means does it preclude MicroVision from winning in L2, L2 plus, or level 3 from the other OEMs. So we can tip our cap to the competitors and say, job well done, and at the same time recognize that what this means is there's more demand for LiDAR becoming evident in the market. You need it for level 3, you need it for level 4, maybe you need it for level 2 plus 2, which is where the volume really is. So we'll see if MicroVision can position MVIS on the corners as a key safety enabler for L2 plus. I don't know, but it would be really great if we could, because that's where the tens of millions of unit volume resides. All right, I think that's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for sticking with me. Thanks to everybody who's subscribed. Thanks to everybody who's left a comment. Thanks for all your encouragement and well wishes. It really means a lot. Thanks to everybody for shopping on Laser Roasted. Make this Christmas a Laser Roasted Christmas with the most flavorful, delicious coffees on earth. There's nothing your significant wants under the tree more than a bag of freshly roasted coffee beans from laserroasted.com. All right, thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next Saturday.